All right, everybody, welcome. Ready to dive into another fascinating compatibility deep dive.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Today, we are looking at the pairing of Cancer and Virgo, romantically. You guys always have so many good questions about these two.
It's a popular one, and there's a lot to unpack, that's for sure.
So we'll be using this fascinating source we found to explore everything from intimacy and trust to communication styles and shared values.
We're going way beyond those basic sun sign compatibilities you hear about everywhere else, trust me.
Exactly. Okay, so the first thing that jumped out at me from the source was this idea that Cancer and Virgo actually have the potential for, like, great everlasting love. But then on the very next line, it calls intimacy a potential lecture on emotion for this pairing. What is that about? What does that even mean?
You know, it's interesting they put it that way, but I think it's pretty accurate. So you've got Cancer, right, who is all about diving into those emotional depths. Like, they lead with their hearts, and they are not afraid to express their feelings, like, at all.
Classic Cancer.
Right. And then you have Virgo, who is ruled by Mercury, so communication, the mind, that's their domain.
Okay.
So their way of expressing themselves tends to be more practical, more analytical, you know? They think about it, they process it carefully. And it's not that Virgos don't feel deeply. They absolutely do. It's more about how they approach and process those emotions.
It's like even love is something Virgos want to, like, understand completely, maybe even dissect a little.
Exactly. They want to get to the core of it and remember every detail about what you love.
So we're not talking about a Virgo sweeping Cancer off their feet with grand romantic gestures.
Probably not. They'd much rather show their love through those everyday acts of service. Like, they might organize their partner's sock drawer or plan a surprise weekend getaway that caters to their partner's every need.
That actually sounds really thoughtful when you put it that way.
Right. It's all about those small but significant gestures that say, I see you, I'm here for you. And I think that's where this whole lecture on emotion thing comes into play.
Okay, explain that.
So because Cancer thrives on emotional expression, outward displays of affection, a Virgo's love language can take some getting used to.
So the Virgo's feeling it, they're just not shouting it from the rooftop.
Exactly. It can be an adjustment for a Cancer to understand that. You know, our source even mentions Virgo having Venus in its fall.
Venus in its fall. Okay, first of all, dramatic. But what does that even mean in plain English?
Basically, it just means that Virgos might express love in ways that aren't super obvious or showy. And again, for a Cancer who really thrives on that emotional connection and that kind of, like, overt affection, it can be a point of friction.
I can see that. I can also see a Cancer being like, why are you overthinking this? Just love me.
It's understandable. But here's the thing. Virgos crave reassurance just as much as any other sign, especially in matters of the heart. So analyzing their partner's emotions might actually be their way of trying to make sure they're getting it right.
Wow, so it's almost like a way of saying, I'm taking this seriously by putting in that extra effort to understand.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's such a fascinating point that often gets missed in these compatibility conversations.
It definitely adds a whole new layer, for
Yeah.
sure. But how does this emotional dynamic affect the way these two build trust in a relationship? That feels important.
Oh, absolutely. So we've got Cancer, who is all about stability, dedication, especially to family, right? And that can actually be incredibly reassuring to a Virgo.
I don't know. Cancers can be a little moody sometimes. How does that go over with a Virgo?
I think the key is that Cancers are very much all in once they choose a partner. They're not here to play games. It's about that shared life, that sense of security. And that's something a Virgo finds incredibly attractive and reassuring.
Okay, I can see that. But be honest, how much patience does it really take to deal with a Virgo who seems to overthink everything? Even love. Asking for a friend, obviously.
Well, and that's the thing with this pairing, right? Those qualities that might seem challenging on the surface can actually become their biggest strengths. Like, Cancers have this deep well of patience, especially when it comes to people they love. And remember, Virgos are all about growth, about understanding. They want to get it right.
Okay, that does make me feel a bit better.
Yeah.
But let's talk communication for a sec. We touched on how Cancers kind of lead with their hearts and Virgos lead with their heads. How does that play out in their actual, like, day-to-day conversations?
Yeah, it's really fascinating when you look at the cosmic side of it. The moon ruling Cancer and Mercury ruling Virgo.
Right.
It's like, imagine a Cancer is feeling super stressed after a crazy day. They need to vent, get all those emotions out in the open.
Ugh, I feel that.
But a Virgo, with their logical, Mercury-ruled mind, they might jump straight into problem-solving mode.
Oh, no.
Right. Offering solutions and advice when really what the Cancer wants is a warm hug and someone to just listen.
Oof, yeah. Been there. Like, sometimes you don't want a solution, you just want to be heard.
Exactly. It's like they're speaking two totally different languages, and it can create a lot of tension if they're not careful. It's a classic communication clash.
For sure. Especially with these two signs where their planetary rulers are basically pulling them in opposite directions.
Yeah,
It's a lot. But so is there hope? Can they bridge that gap?
absolutely. I really do believe that when they can learn to appreciate those differences, it can lead to incredible growth.
Okay, so how do they do that? Where do they even start?
Awareness is key. Cancers, remember. When your Virgo partner is analyzing or trying to fix things, it comes from a good place.
Right. It's not that they don't care.
Exactly. They genuinely want to help. And Virgos, I'd say, resist that urge to jump into fix-it mode right away.
Easier said than done, right?
For sure. But sometimes, just listening with empathy, validating your Cancer partner's feelings, that's the most helpful thing you can do.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered the emotional landscape, the communication hurdles. What about shared values?
Yeah.
That feels important.
Totally.
Because, like, from the outside, family-oriented, nurturing Cancer and practical, detail-oriented Virgo seem like total opposites. What do they actually have in common when it comes to, actually building a life together?
That is such a good question. And honestly, you've hit on something super important. Because while their approaches might look different, at their core, both Cancer and Virgo crave that stable, loving, harmonious home life. They both really value security, loyalty, having a space where they can truly be themselves.
Okay, I can kind of see that. It's
Yeah.
less about being exactly the same and more about wanting the same things deep down.
Exactly.
So how do their different approaches, like, actually play out in a real-world relationship? I need an example.
Okay, perfect example. Creating that harmonious home life we were just talking about. A Cancer might express this by, prioritizing warmth, comfort, emotional connection. They're the ones making sure the house actually feels like a home. And a Virgo might express that same value through order and cleanliness, making sure everything is running smoothly.
So one's not better than the other. They just go about it in totally different ways.
Right. And in that sense, it becomes a real strength, not a source of conflict.
Okay, I like that. So, like, the Cancer brings that emotional depth, reminds the Virgo to slow down and just enjoy the moment, and the Virgo helps the Cancer channel their emotions in healthy ways and create a solid foundation.
Absolutely. You got it.
It's like they each have their own superpower, and together they make this incredible team. But, okay, what about shared activities? I'm super curious about this.
Good point.
Like, do Cancers and Virgos even enjoy doing the same things? Or are we talking about one of those couples who basically live totally separate lives? Because that can work too.
This is another area where their differences can be a major plus, actually. So both signs, in their own way, really value their independence. Cancers, as much as they love their people, they need their alone time, too, to process everything,
To recharge those emotional batteries, it's a real thing.
Exactly. And Virgos, with those analytical minds, they love to have their solo time, too, to dive into their own interests. Maybe read a book, learn something new. Who knows? Maybe they're organizing their sock drawer.
Hey, if that's what makes you happy.
Yeah.
But I think that's so interesting that this need for independence could actually be a strength for this pair.
It's huge. They don't need to be joined at the hip to feel secure, which takes so much pressure off the relationship. They can have their own identities, their own passions, and still have this deep connection.
That makes a lot of sense. And when they do come together, it's like they appreciate those differences even more.
Exactly. This
Yeah.
has been fun. What an interesting pairing, right? So interesting. Okay, so much to unpack here. As we're wrapping up, what are the key things our listeners should remember about a Cancer-Virgo love match?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is this. Cancer and Virgo have incredible potential for a love that's both deeply emotional and also incredibly grounding.
The best of both worlds, kind of.
Right. But to really tap into that potential, they need to understand each other.
Yeah.
Really understand each other. So, Cancers, remember that your Virgo partner's analytical nature isn't personal, it's just how they process things.
Right.
And Virgos, don't underestimate the power of a warm embrace. Your Cancer partner needs that reassurance.
And in general.
Right.
Celebrate those differences. And that's what makes this pairing so special.
Absolutely.
Embrace the things that make you unique, because those can actually become the strengths of the relationship. This was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive. And remember, the stars might guide us, but ultimately, you're the one writing your own love story.